Good morning, brothers and sisters.
Good morning.
It's great to see so many members of the Franciscan family here in the chapel, although I was a little surprised when I found out that there would be this many of you. So, bear with me. You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it rests in you. As I reflected on today's gospel, these words of St. Augustine seem to hang as the backdrop to the beautiful narrative presented by Jesus. In the parable, we find vivid images of two restless hearts, those of a rebellious younger son and a self-righteous older son. We see in them two models of longing or hungering for something that they haven't yet grasped. We generally know this parable by the title, The Prodigal Son, but I'd like to suggest another name for the sake of today's reflection: the parable of the two hungers. I know it just doesn't have the same ring, but bear with me. I think the beauty of this narrative is that the characters are so real. Their behaviors are something that we can all relate to in one way or another. And this invites us into the story to consider where our own hearts lie. So let's jump into the story of the younger prodigal son. We all know his story. The younger son demands half of the inheritance while his father is still living. He goes into town and squanders the money in a life of dissipation until it's all gone. A famine comes and he's left destitute. He becomes so desperate that he hires himself out as a swineherder, where we hear, "He longed to eat the fill of the pods on which the swine fed, but nobody gave him any." We find the prodigal son hungry on multiple levels. At home, he was not content. He longed for something and found himself searching in all the wrong places. Who can't relate to this? Longing and hungering for happiness, but just like the prodigal son, after spending our energies in the wrong places, wind up empty. And maybe our initial hunger is even magnified. And even for those who have gone through a significant conversion experience, is it not an ongoing struggle? Trying to find fulfillment somewhere apart from God, whether this is in work, entertainment, achievements, the approval of others, substances, anything that we seek to fill the hole that's in our hearts apart from God. Let's turn to the second son. I wish we had a name for him like the prodigal son. It seems that he's just as lost as his prodigal brother. So in Luke's gospel, I think he's comparing the Pharisees and the scribes to the older son. So we'll just call him the Pharisaical son for now. After learning that his younger brother has returned to the recklessly extravagant welcome of his father, the Pharisaical son stands outside and refuses to come in. When the father comes out to him, we hear the response, "Look, all these years I served you, and not once did I disobey your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends." Again, I think we hear a restlessness, a hunger in the words of the older son. He seems to long for his father's approval. He's been faithful his whole life. He's done all the right things. And yet he's never been given as much as a young goat to celebrate with his friends. And here his dissolute brother is given a fatted calf. At first, I think it's easy to sympathize with this son. What an injustice. Where's the reward for his faithfulness? But the father's words place the son's position in a different light. We hear, "My son, you are with me always. Everything I have is yours." The poverty of the older son lies in the fact that he has everything the father has to give, but doesn't yet realize it. So for those who have been trying intentionally to live this Christian life for a while, it's easy to fall into the restlessness of the older son. We can begin making religion about ourselves, thinking that it's by our own efforts that we've progressed in this life. We can measure ourselves against others, maybe our prodigal brothers and sisters, or against some ideal that we hold in our head. We can say, I'm living my life well. Surely God is happy with me. Surely I've gained the love and affection of the Father. But in this, we miss the point that we already have the love of the Father. Our faithfulness is in response to not the cause of the Father's love. So as we go through Lent, we have the classic prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. It's a time of self-imposed hunger, if you will, in which we're called to examine our hearts, to see where our hearts and our passions lie. Perhaps we're pulled by the hunger of the younger son, seeking happiness or fulfillment in things other than God. So we fast from excesses of food and entertainment and so on. Or perhaps we struggle with the hunger of the older son, exalting ourselves above others, or looking down and judging those with more visible problems than our own. Regardless of our struggle, as we identify where our hungers are not directed to God, we're called to take tangible steps to reorient this hunger to God alone. As a sort of epilogue to this reflection, I suggested that the parable we've been reflecting on could be called the parable of the two hungers. Lame name, I know, but whatever. So there's still one character that we haven't really talked about that much, and that's the Father. And in him, we also see a certain longing and a hunger. In his relationship with the prodigal son, the father sees him at a distance and, running to him, ignores the son's inadequate apology and lavishly welcomes him home, back into a relationship with the family. With the older son, it's the father who takes the initiative. Not only does the father come out to the older son, but he explains to the older son that he already possesses everything belonging to the father. And further, I think the father invites the son to a richer identity. In the parable, the father is representative of God, right? And God is love. So when the father invites the older son into the house to celebrate the return of his younger brother, it's an invitation to partake in and participate in his very nature of merciful love. It's a love that's meant to be given away even to those who have drifted most visibly from his will. So in conclusion, I pray that as we reorient our hunger towards God this Lent, we might recognize the great gift that we already have, the love of a merciful Father who never tires of reaching out to us. May our hearts find rest in him alone. Amen.
Amen.